Hello and welcome to the Stand Up for the Story podcast. Today I'm thrilled to introduce you to Tabitha James Kraan. Tabitha is a hairdresser, a Marie Curie Beauty Awards judge, an ambassador for the Soil Association and founder of Tabitha JK, an award-winning range of organic hair care products. Tabitha, welcome to the Stand Up for the Story podcast.
Let me just say that's Marie Claire. I'm a judge for Marie Claire, not Marie Curie.
Why would I put Marie Curie? Because I'm menopausal. That's why.
Well, thank you very much, Rachel. I'm very excited to be here today. It's really nice to be able to come on and talk to you about storytelling.
Yeah, it's really lovely to have a guest on. A couple of the other guests I've worked with as well, but it's lovely to have a guest on who's been through the brand new story process. I'm going to begin the conversation today. I'm going to ask you the same question that I've asked all of our guests. What's the story that you're here to stand up for?
I'm here to stand up for the story of hair care, what I believe should be the future of hair care, and how we've been being misled for a very long time. I think that we were shown a certain way back in time and it just evolved into something really unhealthy for us, really unhealthy for our bodies and really unhealthy for the planet.
So how does this story currently show up in the world? What's wrong with it?
Everybody washes their hair. It seems like a very simple act, something very basic that we all do for our basic hygiene. And my understanding over the last 20 years really has I've come to realize that this actually isn't an innocent act at all. The way that we're doing it and the chemicals that are being used are actually very, very harsh and have a big impact on our bodies, have a big impact on our health, and also have a big impact on the planet.
Yeah, and I think what I loved when I was working on the story with you is that we went right back to the olden days when people would use a bar of soap to wash their body, their hair, their clothes, and how it was Schwarzkopf and his wife brought out the first shampoo.
Liquid shampoo, yes.
Yeah, the first liquid shampoo. And how that kind of started to change everything. And we'll get back to that in a minute. But would you be able to share your kind of personal aha moment, your awakening to why there was a problem and why you wanted to change this story?
It was a conversation with a savvy midwife. It was 1999. I was pregnant with my eldest son. And the midwife said to me, okay, so now that you're pregnant, you need to stop colouring your hair. And I said, okay, I'm actually a hairdresser, so I know all about this. And she said, oh, okay, so what do you know? And I said, in my industry, where we've been taught about that when you're pregnant, your hormones might be different and therefore the colour might not take properly, etc. And she said, no, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm more concerned about is the fact that what's absorbed through your body into your unborn child. And that she said, your scalp is like another mouth. If you think about it, it's the highest concentration of hair follicles on your whole body. And every single one of those hair follicles has a bloodstream, a blood supply to it, which is a direct line into the bloodstream. And she said, and therefore what you're putting on your scalp will be absorbed in and it will go directly into your unborn child.
Right.
I was like, whoa, okay, why has nobody talked to me about that before? But now you say that, that's really obvious. And genuinely in my industry, it wasn't taught and still isn't taught.
What is the real problem when it comes to hair care and the products that we're currently using?
The problem is detergent, traditional detergent, and all shampoo bases have a traditional detergent base. Now, some of them have got sulfate-free now, and things like that have been starting to come to light in the last few years. But essentially, the job of a shampoo is to remove all traces of oil. Its job is to work as a degreasant.
Yeah.
A degreasant, by its very nature, will literally dissolve the oil. But if you do that to the scalp, then the body has a response to that. The body will create oil to put it back on the skin because the skin is just the scalp. We're supposed to have a very fine layer of oil over our whole body. And it's the protective layer. It's what keeps the skin happy and healthy. It's called the acid mantle, and it's the protective layer that is, say, over the skin, over the whole body. So if you wash your face with something that's too strong, and you've removed the acid mantle, you get that tightness in your face. That's how you know when it's gone. It's the same if we're washing dishes at home with washing up liquid. And after a while, if you've not been wearing gloves, your hands feel really tight. It's the same thing. And if you think about it, when you've shampooed your hair, you get that tight feeling on your scalp. if you've used a traditional shampoo. The problem is that the body overreacts to that because you're not doing what the body needs. You're throwing it out of balance. You're making the body work really hard to produce the oil to put it back again, meaning the body's doing a job it's really not designed to do. It's not meant to be spending every day making more oil for the scalp because it's got other things it needs to be doing with that moisture. And so you're dehydrating your whole body by doing it. But the other thing is then the result is that every single morning you wake up with greasy hair.
Yeah.
And that means that you have to wash it more than you should wash it. So you're out of balance. And if you think about how many more showers or how many more longer showers you're having to have each week, because you're having to factor in a hair wash, which takes a long time. And that is an awful lot of water use. And in our homes, the biggest use of carbon in our homes is heating up hot water. This is really bad for the environment, really, really bad for our hair because it leaves the hair feeling lank and fly away and having no life in it. It's lost all its natural luster because we've removed all of the natural moisture from the hair. Skin is overreacting and out of balance. So we've got a scalp that's really unhealthy and it's not going to be, lots of people experience hair loss in their life. This totally exaggerates any hair loss that's going on because of hormonal reasons in the body. This absolutely exasperates it. So hair loss will be quicker because of shampooing the hair every day with a traditional shampoo.
And I think it's exhausting doing that and having to blow dry your hair into perfection every day. And also it reminds me of when you're speaking, and especially with your role with the Soil Association, that what we're doing to our scalps, we're doing to the soils as well. It feels like stripping it of all that natural goodness.
100%. And it breaks my heart when you think about the soil. We need the soil to feed us in the future. We need the soil to give us nutritious food so that we can stay alive on this planet.
Yeah.
We need the soil to give us nutritious ingredients for our products. We've been using botanical ingredients in skincare forever. All the leading brands have been using botanicals because they're potent, they're powerful. But the problem is if we take them in such a vicious way with mass farming, using chemical herbicides, pesticides, chemical fertilizers, this is a really extreme way of doing it, and it leaves the soil depleted of life. And therefore, you've got to keep feeding the soil with more chemical fertilizer to try and make it grow. But that method has a life cycle. You have to move on to another field because it can't keep going. Whereas if you're buying an organic product, this is where the big difference comes in. Because you buy an organic product, you're supporting a farming method that's all about regenerating that soil constantly. It's about keeping that soil and the life force in that soil alive so that it's able to give us nutritious food, nutritious ingredients. And that will go on for generations. That soil just, the more you feed into that, it just gets better and better. And that's how we get our highly potent ingredients.
And it feels like we're mirroring what's going on in the soil. We're mirroring in our scalps, aren't we? So much of what you just spoke about, you can transfer that to the depleting the soils, depleting the scalp.
Depleting our bodies, just putting so much stress on our bodies that doesn't need to be there. If we want to be happy and healthy in our body, we need to be in balance. And if we're doing a job daily to our body that's really disrupting our natural rhythm, our natural equilibrium, that's not a healthy, happy body in balance. And it shows up in lots of different ways. A lot of experts are aware that it can show up in the face. Issues can be showing up in the face. It's often the shampoo that's causing that. It can also show up anywhere on the body. Over the years doing what I do, I've met many men and women whose bodies have just said no. And they've reached a point where they've got toxic overload and their body's throwing out rashes and really unpleasant things because it just can't cope anymore with the external toxic overload and it's usually cosmetics that are causing that.
What needs to change?
1999 was a long time ago now. I started on a journey to look for better products, look for things that I could improve the status quo.
Yeah.
I couldn't find it. And I started to work with natural ingredients in my own kitchen at home. I started to figure out what weight of lotions and potions do I need to make the hair feel better, to make it behave differently? How much moisture can it take if I start putting this oil back, if I start putting the nutrition and the life was back into the hair and the scalp? How much can it take? All of that, playing with it in my kitchen. I then started to work with labs I went through 4 labs before I could find a lab that was prepared to let me reinvent the wheel for a start. They all said to me, no, Tabitha, what lovely organic ingredients would you like to put into this base formula of shampoo? No, that's not what I mean. I want it all to be organic. I don't want to have a disruptive conversation with the body. So how do I create a total formula that isn't that? How can we do this less aggressively?
All those bases are detergent.
Yeah. For shampoo, as far as they're concerned. And they also said, oh, and by the way, if molecularly, the base of shampoo is the same, whether it's industrial floor cleaner or engine degreasant, because a degreasant is a degreasant. I'm like, great. And we're putting it into this open mouth that it's very close to our brain, and we're absorbing that directly into the bloodstream. No wonder people's bodies are saying no. No wonder people are having such extreme responses over time. And the very basic initial responses are greasy hair. If your hair is greasy, you're out of balance. You need to be less aggressive in the way that you wash your hair. Hair by nature is self-cleaning. And we've all heard of these methods and people that go rogue and just let it go, let the hair become completely natural and go through the grime. It's hideous to do that. It's not a fun way to do it, but it works in that you can get yourself off shampoo by doing that.
I know quite a few people, mainly men, who have done that. I haven't washed my hair for 10 years or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And the hair quite quickly, after a few months, will become self-cleaning. It's like water off a duck's back. You need to have that very fine layer of oil and it becomes the moisturizer naturally. The hair becomes very, very natural and exactly how it should be.
Yeah.
When my sons were growing up, I never washed their hair. I didn't start washing it with any kind of detergent. And as a consequence, they just had beautiful hair that didn't get greasy during the teenage years, that just looked normal.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to put gel in it and everything else because it just looked great. It had its own natural movement.
What's the answer that you bring to help people to disrupt and transform the story of hair care in their own lives?
Well, in my kitchen, I learned that natural was best. So if the purer I got the ingredients, the better results I got. So there's, okay, step 1, I know that I need natural. Well, how do I guarantee it's authentically natural? Well, when I started to open up that door, the level of greenwashing just blew me away. I couldn't believe what was described as natural. So I realized the only way I could authenticate natural myself was to say that something was organic, because that meant that the way that it was grown also supported the soil, as we were just discussing. It also meant that in the processing of those ingredients that no other chemicals were added. So it still remained natural once it had been processed from a plant to an ingredient. And then when I put the formula together, I want it to still remain natural. So that's when I realized that I need certification, because I need to evidence I need to evidence to anyone who's looking at my product to what lengths we've gone through to ensure that it is authentically natural and that we haven't had any chemicals infiltrate this product. And the reason for that is because if you want me to say that something is natural at the end of this, then that's what has to happen. It seems extreme, but there is a choice, right? As a consumer, I hate that word, but as a consumer, if we're purchasing something that we want to consume, we can choose to have something cosmetic or something natural.
Yeah.
If we want natural, that's what we should get. And sadly, the landscape is so blurred. There is so much greenwashing. And for anyone who doesn't know what I mean by that, when people claim that something is sustainable and it's natural because it's vegan, no. A cosmetic is not natural and ethical just because it's vegan. That's not what vegan means. Vegan means it's not been tested on animals. Hello, the rest of us don't. If we're creating quality ethical product, we don't test on animals either. The laws around that have changed dramatically recently again, sadly, which has made that even more blurred. But to say that something's vegan doesn't make it a safe product to use. So often the worst chemicals are added into vegan cosmetics and vegan food. You've got carte blanche to use whatever you want as long as you don't test on animals.
It's a bit like food, isn't it? Like the ultra-processed food movement.
Exactly.
Ultra-processed.
This conversation is so like that with the ultra-processed food. It's exactly that same. And we know how bad ultra-processed food is for us. But what we're talking about here is the difference between ultra-processed products or something that's pure, that's really going to work in harmony with our body. The beautiful thing I learned along the way with this journey was that the more pure the product, the less ultimately I needed to use of it too, because we get the balance back in the body. You don't need to do it very often. No. Therefore, you can wash your hair much less. And this is what I talk about when I say rewild your hair. I don't mean walk around looking like a wild woman or a wild man. What I mean is rewild and connect back with nature.
Yeah.
And let what should happen, let nature do its thing in your own body. and find balance. And then you need less chemicals. Then it feels good to take quality from nature. I want that to feel empowering, which is why I created my range around rituals of hair care. Let's go back to washing our hair once a week, ultimately. You can't go there straight away. You've got to train your body to get to that point. But that's a fun journey. And when you get there, if you're washing your hair once a week, imagine if half the planet did that. Went back to washing their hair once a week instead of getting up and scrubbing their hair with detergent every morning. Imagine the impact on the planet, how much less water, less carbon, less chemicals being washed down the plug hole into the water system. The thing I haven't mentioned here as well, and the shocking thing that I learned along the way with this journey, was just how many really horrific ingredients are going into cosmetics, and particularly hair care, but general cosmetics, body lotions, liquid hands,
Some of the makeup as well.
foundations.
Yeah, when I used lovely soft primers and then realised that, well,
Polymers.
because it's probably full of nanoplastics.
Yeah. The nanoplastics are plastic emulsions, polymers, copolymers, acetates, these types of ingredients. There's lists of them that get hidden in the parfum, or if the word fragrance is on the back of the bottle, or perfume, you don't have to disclose what's in a perfume because that's perfume protection laws. So as a consequence to that, what people will do is put endocrine disrupting ingredients and really nasty ingredients in through the perfume route, get them into the bottle.
And those really affect aquatic life. I remember, I think we've spoken before, when I worked at the Environment Agency, a scientist wrote, and then I had to, plain English, a briefing note on endocrine disruptors in certain products that were going into the water systems and fish were changing genders. And that was 20 odd years ago. And here we are still using a lot of these products.
Absolutely hideous. And the nanoplastics get washed down the sink and they come back in our drinking water. So that's one of the ways we're finding so much plastic in the human body, is because it's coming back in our drinking water. It's not just from us using single-use plastic bottles. It's more that we're washing so many things down the plug hole that those don't get filtered out at the water plant, and that's coming back in our drinking water.
I think it'd be really interesting for listeners for you to talk through what's the actual 3-step process that they can go through for rewilding their hair.
I came up with a 3-step concept of how we rewild our hair, how we rethink the method of how we wash our hair so that we don't need products that contain plastic ingredients. What I didn't mention was the phthalates that are hormone disruptors, that are plasticizers, that help those plastic ingredients attach to the hair or the skin or whatever we're putting them on our bodies. If we're not going to have those ingredients, how are we going to help make the hair feel as good as it would with that method? I realized that we needed to put the oil back, but it was all about putting it back in the right way. Less is more, the tiniest amount. So we rebuild the acid mantle that's been taken away from the hair, so we get the hair roots to tips. Feeling amazing. So what we do in our method is to, first of all, pre-oil the hair with a pre-wash treatment, just a tiny amount of oil. It's beautifully scented. It's the purest cold-pressed certified organic oils that just deliver and mimic the acid mantle and put that back straight away, bringing the hair, the fabric of the hair, back to life. It can also be used on the scalp to have the conversation with the scalp about rebalancing if that's required.
Yeah.
The second step then is to wash the hair. I call it correct cleansing. But what I'm saying is look at, everyone's different and their needs are different. So look at how you need to actually wash your hair. Depends on your hair type. If you're somebody that does get oily, then you need to cleanse with something that's going to have a quicker conversation with your scalp to calm down the oil production. Then my hair cleanser is an amazing problem solver for anyone who's out of balance, whether they're very oily or very dry. The problem solver goes there quickly.
And what I really loved is when I first used it, you were saying that you think about it in terms of washing your scalp rather than your hair as well.
Yeah. Well, so many of us look like Marge Simpson, where they've got a rubber-dubbed big sort of mass of foam on top of their head, bubbles up to the sky. It's not necessarily to do that. And actually, you don't want to be removing moisture from the hair. It's a delicate fabric. Think of your hair as cashmere. You would not put a cashmere sweater in the washing machine every day and just scrub it with detergent. You just wouldn't do that. You'd ruin it in a week. So don't do that to your hair. We would need to wash it more respectfully. So if we wash our scalp with something gentle, and my hair cleanser is amazing if you've got problems. My clean shampoo is a beautiful, pure shampoo that doesn't contain any of those harsh chemicals. It just very respectfully cleans the roots of your hair, breaks down the natural oils and refreshes it so that you're good to go and back in balance. When you're then cleaning the hair is my third step. Think about moisture layering. So we need to start building layers of moisture in the hair so that the fabric of hair starts to come back to life and behaves in a way that we can control it and take hold of it and get it to do what we want it to do, whether that's softening out curls or encouraging curls or smoothing out frizz or giving your hair life when it's just normally flat and lank. Whatever your hair type, we can use moisture to bring the hair back to life. And we layer that moisture. So if you've got very curly hair that's thirsty, clean your hair with moisturizer, clean your hair with the conditioner. So co-washing is a thing for dry hair types and for curly hair types. And then when you get to the conditioning stage, you're combing through a detangler that's going to really nourish the hair, add moisture so it becomes manageable. And then you layer up that moisture depending on how dry your hair is.
Yeah.
With multiple layers to then dry or style the hair.
Yeah. And I think what's really interesting is obviously organic costs more than traditional products. But what I found really interesting is over time, I inherited my dad's very fine hair. And so when I went through the rewilding my hair ritual, I was quite unique in that I had to wash my scalp a bit more to start with. But now I've got to the point where I wash my hair twice a week. I haven't quite got to that weekly yet. And so the cost of the outlay of paying the extra for that organic product when you're using something so much less eventually
Completely changes the story, doesn't it?
evens itself out and you're not using as much product.
Exactly that. You'll use less. So I think at the end of the day, in the beginning, if you're using a product to change the behavior of your body, you've got to use the product. So you do have to wash more in the beginning and you do need more product, especially a few weeks in. If you're overproducing oil, you might need to use plenty of product to break down that oil initially just to get things to calm down. Once that starts to happen, everything starts to change and your second bottle will definitely last longer than the first.
Yeah.
And this is where you get into the realms of me saying things like sustainability is in the DNA of this brand, because I don't want you to use lots of product ultimately. I want you to use a little bit of the right thing when you need it.
Yeah. And this is what I love about what you're doing, because there's so many products that we come across in our life that are inauthentic and that stick of rock is not true all the way through. And I think the work you're doing to change this story I just feel so privileged to have worked with you. And I think you're totally inspiring as a businesswoman and in your authenticity as a brand as well.
Thank you.
And
Back at you.
I want everybody to their hair and ditch all of those nasty chemicals, because people would be gutted if they knew what they were doing.
Exactly that. And it is about education. So thank you for having me on here and giving me an opportunity to talk about this, because I think the more people find out that there is another way, it's just so empowering. And so I love the idea that thinking like every time you make an organic purchase as well, think about how you're helping the planet in that purchase by choosing an organic cosmetic. And there are so many beautiful organic cosmetics now. Look for certification is my best advice when you're coming for skincare as well, for body care, for wellness products. Look for certified brands, because that's a great starting place for trust.
Yeah.
And the more you start to learn about what's not in their products, you can start to realize what is in other products.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So what will the brand new story of hair care look like in 5 years' time?
I want to be educating the educators on scale. I want the hairdressing industry to wake up and realize what they're doing wrong. There's a lot of people out there using what they think is organic product. If they learn about ingredients, they will soon realize that it is not organic product. It's just masquerading as, and that's the worst kind of greenwashing for me, is to be claiming you are when you're not. But I also I'm working closely now with people in the spa industry. People go to spas to relax and unwind, and it's a great place for education. So I really hope that within 5 years, the story of hair care has evolved. We've been working internationally right from the get-go, but we're starting to work with more countries and educate on a wider scale. And that's just really important. I think we've got to all collectively start to realize water is going to become such a precious commodity for us all in the future. We can make a big difference by not washing toxic cosmetics down the plug hole.
Yeah.
So the more people we can get to change their simple practices at home, if we can change those simple practices at home, it will make a big difference. More of us doing it, every little light and all that.
And so that brings me to the closing question of what's the one thing or a couple of things that listeners can do right now in order to change this story in terms of their own personal hair care and maybe their hairdresser.
Challenge them to think about using organic products in their salon. Think about using things differently. If we're going to take from nature, let's do it properly and take it make sure they're grown organically, the ingredients. If somebody can't get to me, if my products aren't in their price point at this point, I would say start to train your hair to stay cleaner longer, and
Right.
do that one day at a time, or even half a day at a time. So if you normally wash your hair every morning, second day, get to the evening, wash it in the evening, and do that for a couple of months.
Yeah.
And then carry on doing that. And then go another half a day. So it's every second day instead of every day.
Yeah.
And do that for another couple of months. And just gradually start training your body to come off shampoo. When you're washing it less and you're down to washing it a couple of times a week, you can definitely afford my product because it will last you so much longer.
Where can we find out more about you and the range?
TabithaJK.com, TabithaJamesKraan.com. I'm on socials, TabithaJK everywhere. On Twitter, Instagram, on Facebook, you'll find me at TabithaJK.
Yeah.
I do a lot of blogs on my website. We're telling our story a lot, all the time, every single week. You can sign up for my newsletters that come out every week. We're talking about the story all the time and just keeping you in the loop with really valuable information that will really help you on your hair care journey.
And I love that you've got all of that information for everyday people buying the products, but then you've also got the same thing, the salon owners and the other heroes of this story.
Absolutely, yes. The salon owners and anyone who's selling products. Maybe you've got a retail shop where you sell, maybe even a concept store or a lifestyle store where you want to be more conscious about what you're selling, but you want to have some beautiful cosmetics. We supply all sorts of businesses that are just wanting to do it better.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today, Tabitha.
So much for having me on, Rachel.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed this process. The Brandy story was just such a wonderful thing. And I have to tell you that it took you talking to me to extract a lot of this information out of my head so that we could get it down on paper and be a story that I can build an army with. And that's the difference. At the end of the day, if you want to make change in the world, you need people to be able to change. And I needed to tell my story in a story form. And this has just been the most beautiful process.
Yeah, I'm really pleased. And it's one that's ongoing as well. And thank you for standing up for the story of hair care on behalf of all of us. If anything you've heard today has inspired you to want to create a brand new story for your company, please visit brandnewstory.co.uk to find out more. And to support the show, please can you hit that subscribe button, leave a review and share this episode with other pioneers in your network. And remember, keep pushing those boundaries, keep standing up for those stories, and I'll see you next time.